Dear faculty members, Assalamu alaikum. I hope everyone is doing fine. First of all, I would like to welcome you to this online training session on pedagogical skills and OBE concepts. So for the most part of this video, I will be covering some basic aspects about pedagogical skills. So before diving into the details, I would like to make you aware that you may encounter some problems during the video tutorial in forms of some noise distortion or network problems. Hence, I am highly apologetic for such issues. Pedagogical skills or pedagogical is derived from the word pedagogy, which means the method and the practice of teaching, especially as an academic subject or a theoretical concept. Therefore, it is imperative for every teacher to have these skills imparted within themselves. So these are the skills which are demanded by the teaching profession. So pedagogy is a protean concept which includes some knowledge skills, some planning skills, management and personal ethics skills. So as a teacher, you should be aware of yourself and the surrounding, such as your educational environment. You should be expert in your subject knowledge and you should have some basic understanding of the professional requirements for teaching profession. Along with that, good perception of social and moral values is also essential. And most of all, you must be able to understand the student potentials and their needs. So that is our first aim of this training, that we must set acceptable level of understanding about our student strengths and weaknesses while delivering any course. Secondly, you must learn some skills to design the interactive activities so that your students are able to learn effectively. So you should employ a variety of teaching and learning methods and strategies along with some assessment tools to measure the learning achievements. The second aim is targeted on such skills which encourage teachers to provide support to the students in a variety of ways, including the academic matters along with the non-academic matters such as counseling and guidance. Therefore, teachers must be able to handle some administrative, management, and official correspondence with the students. So at the end of this tutorial, I will provide you some key tips which will encourage you to communicate teaching material more appropriately. And along with the teaching material, I think developing an acceptable behavior with the student is more essential than instructing them on a certain topic. So I highly emphasize to set a formal ethical code that you must employ while any social interaction with the student. So here are our objectives. At first, we will grasp some understanding about the process of learning. So we will start with some essential ingredients that constitute a learning for students. To do that, we have to discuss the factors in learning related problems of the students and individual differences between the students. So you may have encountered several scenarios in which you are unable to communicate your instructional material to the students, or they may seem some of the students may seem to face some problems related to the content delivery. So as I have mentioned earlier, not only the teaching skills but the non-academic activities also play a vital role in your communication with the student. So in this video we will also highlight some concepts of motivation in student-teacher interactions. So we will discuss some stress-related issues and techniques or points to handle the stress in the students as well as in the teachers. So you may encounter that some students create some form of stress in the form of some irrelevant activities or messages on the social media or the communication platforms being used in the online lecture delivery. So we will also discuss the role of a teacher in the student counseling and guidance. And finally, I will provide some key tips for effective content delivery. So let's move back to the agenda item number one, where we mentioned the pedagogy is the method and the practice of teaching, especially as an academic subject or the theoretical concept. So by definition, some related behaviors or some teaching acts which are aimed at a specific objectives with intended facilitation of the learning, students learning can be called pedagogy or teaching skills. As you can see, it is a composite statement which highlights that we have to find out some specific objectives while delivering any material to the students. And our focus is on the intended facilitation of students' learning. So the knowledge about these skills help the teacher to contemplate on their strengths as well as the weaknesses while interacting with the students. So you can relate this example or this definition to your personal experiences that you have faced in past few semesters, where you interact with your students and they return some informal or formal problems in form of some complaints that uh, the level of instruction is not met by the teacher, or the level of content uh, produced or delivered to the student is not at an acceptable level at which the students are pursuing. Therefore, it is essential to have some main ground on which both the teacher and the student agree upon, and a healthy environment can be created for some useful learning of the concepts. And at the same time, I also like to put emphasis for the teachers as well, that in only acquiring information and converting it to some material and delivering it to the student, it is not the end of the cycle. Apart from this concept, I think it is essential to have some other skills so that the students are managed effectively. So teaching skills are usually divided into two subdomains. The first one is instructional skills, which are purely related with the content of your lectures, the assessment methods, and other delivery mechanism or external sources which you provide with the lecture materials. At the same time, you have to manage the students and you have to guide them so that they, you guide them to become what they want to be actually in their life. So you need some organizational skills in yourself as some professional responsibilities. So in instruction skills, you have to organize and structure the acquired knowledge in such a way that it becomes transferable to the students. So you have to the keep in mind the needs of the students and their strengths as well as the weaknesses. So the transfer of this knowledge to the student is most important obligation. So you have to design your content delivery in such a method that it is uh, easily captured by the students, so that the transferring knowledge is delivered with the maximum perfection to the learner, so that the learner can apply that knowledge independent of the teacher and generate further knowledge from that. So that is one concept of our OBE, in which we have to employ higher level cognitive skills to the student, so that they can generate some new form of knowledge based upon the knowledge you have delivered to them. Similarly, at the same time, organizational skills such as uh, managing or encouraging students to do better, providing them with more adequate examples, or managing their stress or problem, or in some cases managing their queries in time, lies with the domain of organizational skills. So as we have seen, learning can form different shapes, and it can be done using the variety of formal and informal ways. However, when we are talking about the university students, we are mostly dealing with the formal form of learning, and the formal form of learning is directly associated with the teaching. So it becomes quite imperative for the teachers to become effective, so that the learners can use that teaching material to enhance their capabilities. Therefore, it also becomes essential for the teachers to understand the psychology of their student, so that the better guidance mechanism can be laid out. Therefore, teaching is often called an art of blending knowledge, science, and creativity, involving number of verbal and non-verbal concepts. So you must be very critical about the delivery of your verbal communication as well as non-verbal behaviors. So here I can relate that in many people's mind, that the teaching is just delivering your lectures, and to teach the subject that you are qualified at your master's or PhD levels. However, uh, very few will say that you have to find out some form of acceptance, or some form of uh, satisfaction while teaching, because the end goal of a teacher must be to achieve the objectives of the material, and to achieve the learning of the student, not just delivering the lectures to the student without essential or without final objective meet. So learning is closely associated with three major factors. So the first factor which we have been discussing is the students, and the teacher must be able to learn about the psychology of the student, to understand their needs, understand their weaknesses, and understand their strengths, so that they can be guided in a right path. It is also essential for the teacher to encourage the student, to motivate them to learn, more about the topic by using prompt responses or encouragements or feedbacks or other variety of the methods. Similarly, the other factor of the learning is the teacher itself. So teacher must be competent about his knowledge, he must be confident to deliver the lecture, and he must be proficient or in his moral or social interactions. So at this stage, I think teachers should learn some methods and techniques that may not only express but also communicate knowledge. So expression means making the learner know something, while communication means the student understand and learn something. So that is our main goal. So if we employ higher order cognitive levels, we can make student learn instead of just knowing the variety of ways which are called uh, teaching methods or techniques. So this knowledge helps to answer what to tell, while the method we employ helps to answer how to tell. So the second factor, which is teacher, must be professionally competent to, and he is expected to know what to tell and how to tell to the students. So you should blend information with your experience. For this, you should let the information run through some personal experiences and observation, as well as you should cross-fertilize it with the personal awareness and the perception of the topic, and then deliver those uh, those fertilized material to the student. Thirdly, another important factor for the learning is the educational setting, which involves the resources and the structure provided by the university. So when we are dealing with the on-campus classes, we should take all the educational settings such as the sitting of the students, the rooms, the temperature, the other facilities provided by the university, along with some uh, the facilities to deliver the lectures, such as monitors, LCD displays, and projectors, etc. So these educational settings also play an important role for the learning and the teaching process. So in these days, with the COVID restriction, it has also become quite essential to utilize the online educational setting environment to its best extent, so that students uh, should not feel the difference between the communication done through on campus and the communication done through online. Therefore, a strong emphasis should be or put on the teachers to design the material in more interactive method, and should employ variety of ways such as online tutorials, interactive web pages, and the material for reading and practice should be shared with the student with each lecture. And it should also be assessed at the end of the lecture or at the end of each week to measure the performance of your student, and so that everyone is on the same page. So at this stage, I would like to request you to pause for a few minutes and engage yourself in this simple activity. And this activity must relate with your personal experiences, and you should uh, list down some common problems of the student with respect to learning, which you are being faced in this uh, semester or in the previous semester. So you should clearly list down the queries or the problems of the students to deliver to you using any online communication medium such as WhatsApp messages or emails, and then you should find out the reasons for such problems. So let me give you some examples or some problems which I have faced or the queries which I have received from the student is that the number one is the number of lectures that or the length of the lecture is quite long, or the voice quality is poor, or in some cases I have received the problem that the content of the lectures is more than more than required. So the point is, all of such issues or problems hinder the process of learning. So you have to find out these problems and list down the reasons of such problems, and then you can have guideline or the awareness of the student problem, and then you can employ some strategies or teaching methods to overcome or minimize these problems from your next teaching encounters. Also take a brief moment and contemplate about your teaching style. So I would encourage you to write some good aspects about your teaching style and some weaknesses about your teaching style. So you can relate this teaching style with the teaching style of your favorite teacher. For example, have you ever thought when you were a student yourself, what qualities of your teacher that had an impact on yourself? Was it his or her dress, personality? It can be his or her teaching style, way of making you understand ideas, or in some cases it can be some non-academic behavior, such as some affectionate attitude, helping in some non-academic activities, some informal talk outside classroom, etc. So the point of mentioning here is that you should have some form of teaching style and some personal behaviors, because such such activities or behaviors have impact on the personality of the students. So if you relate this with your teacher or your favorite teacher, so uh, these styles of your teacher had some impact or growth on your knowledge and personality as well. So you should believe that each activity or each style you follow while delivering your knowledge will also influence your students. So as teacher, we should review ourselves continuously and make sure that no negative impact of our personality is imitating on our students. So the learning process is very different for each individual. So as a teacher, we must manage our behavior to a wide variety of students, so that the majority of students are able to understand and learn from our delivered content. And after that, if a few of the students are left behind, or if their learning style is different, we must allocate some of our time resource to help them out, because we must be aware that human beings are social animals, and they are gifted with certain characteristics and certain weaknesses or the behaviors towards their life and society. So as an individual, as I said earlier, as a teacher, we must be self-aware, and we must, as a students, should also be self-aware of their weaknesses and their strengths. But here the focus is on the teacher, that he or she has to understand the differences between the individuals and their learning style. So every individual of your class has to be educated to develop positive thinking and assimilate the code of life or the other desired skills in order to become a better and useful part of the society. The objective is that no one should be left behind because of being different. So the teacher must employ a variety of methods to deliver the content, to the understand the differences between interpersonal, intrapersonal, and change their teaching method effectively to deal with the targeted students who are different from the rest of the students. And in some tasks, you may employ some grouping strategy, such as making some group discussions or some group assignments. So you should make groups in such a way that uh, the differences are minimized. So it is also a good practice to make groups by yourself instead of letting it onto the students, and you can make groups differently each time while giving them a new assessment task. So by understanding the individual differences and by employing the mechanisms of different strategies for different individuals and different groups for different tasks, help the learning process for a wider range of individuals. So at the same time, we must be informed that there are some individual differences which cannot be eradicated, but you can employ the techniques mentioned in the previous slide to minimize the differences, such as some differences are due to the different genetics or heredity, which are beyond the control of the teachers. Some are environment related, such as different family structures, socio-economic status of the students, their cultural values. The differences are also on the personal level, such as their temperament to manage or understand the differences, their IQ, their emotional quotient, or their spiritual quotient. So keeping in mind all of these differences, the goal should be to educate everyone in a best possible manner so that their end objective is met. So while you are understanding and managing the differences between the individuals, you can also use a variety of learning or teaching styles to enhance the applicability of your techniques. So there are a variety of methods, as three are mentioned here. The Some people are quite proficient to learn from auditory knowledge, so they may require some recorded version of your uh, training material, so they can learn from, they can listen to those recordings and learn from those. However, you can embed the audio material with some visual drawing or visual information presented in the form of tutorials, online web pages, or other interactive materials. Similarly, some people also are more interested to learn while looking at someone doing something, or by doing uh, something uh, by their own hands. So you can employ one or two or three or a combination of methods to enhance the learning of your students. Similarly, individuals also have different cognitive styles and they perceive patterns and exhibit problem solving differently. So you must be adaptable to the needs of the student and to judge them differently to enhance their learning to the best possible extent. So cognitive styles refer to the way of an individual processing information. So it is different than the individual differences in abilities. So the cognitive styles on the other hand describe the person's typical mode of thinking or remembering or problem solving. So here are some styles such as field dependent, field independent, impulsive, reflective, deep processing, and surface styling. So field dependent cognitive styles deal with the perception of a pattern as a whole without separating one element from the total visual field. So such students deal with the information on the whole, or if you give them some task they will take it as a whole without differentiating the sub parts. On the other hand, field independent style people are able to distinguish subparts from the whole information compared to the field dependent individuals who experience such events in an undifferentiated way. So a lot of research has been done and several studies have identified a number of connections between cognitive styles and learning. For example, field independent individuals are more likely to learn more effectively under conditions of motivation, such as if you give them self study, and they are more influenced by social uh, by less social reinforcement. So they are internally motivated to do tasks. So some students have some impulsive cognitive styles and they focus only on finishing the task without going into the details or the underlying mechanisms. So you also have to be aware of such students. There are some reflective cognitive style students which are slow but show less errors or they are more quality uh, focused. So some employ deep processing approach. They they invest their time to understand the concepts, and it will reward them internally by achieving that task in form of the task accomplishment. Some are more interested in surface reading or surface learning, and they mostly focus on memorizing of the concept, and uh, they are more concerned with the external rewards such as getting higher grades and without the need of without the compulsion of task accomplishment. So another important factor in the student learning is the motivation. So motivation is strongly associated with the level of interest in the subject by the teacher as well as by the student. So motivation by definition is an internal state that arouses, directs and maintains some form of behavior. So it is advisable to the teachers to generate the content of their lectures and deliver their lectures in such a manner that it motivates the students to do better than the delivered content. So it also includes that you should not spoon feed the students and tell each and every part of the problem which is being solved on a particular topic or a particular day. So you have to incite their internal motivation to solve the problem in a more effective way. So you at the same time you should not leave everything onto the student without addressing the main concepts about a particular topic. So you have to maintain a balance to instigate their motivation to do better. So similarly, like cognitive styles, there are some hard-coded things in human beings. Uh, so is the case for the motivation. There are different dimensions of motivation, and there are some biological motives, psychological motives, and social motives. So biological motives usually deal with the biological needs such as hunger, etc., or some other biological needs, and they are not associated with the teaching and learning environment. However, psychological and social motives can be targeted for the achievement of learning. So, psychological motives deal with the psychological needs such as interest in the subjects, curiosity about some topic or problem, some form of accomplishment or achievement at uh, at the achieve at the accomplishment or completion of a task, or in the more advanced terms, self actualization of the students by achieving or by focusing their attention or uh, by focusing their direction in some particular life path. So if you are able to capture their psychological needs and you direct them in a more directed path about their future, uh, it can be for a particular course or in general their 4-year program. So it is a good uh, indicator for uh, accomplishment or self-actualization in the students. So you should also encourage the motivation of the students by giving them some social motives, which are needs and desires that are learned through experience with the social world. For example, connecting to different people, getting some higher positions, getting some higher grades, getting some reinforcement during the lectures, or the reinforcement at the end of the semester, or at the end of the year. So we have to be motivated by ourselves first, because we can only bring the motivation or change in the motivation of the student when we have the capacity to motivate or capability to motivate ourselves to do the things in a more efficient way. So you can change the mind of the students through the power of your knowledge, your experience, your curiosity about the subject, or your intellectual uh, ability. So only then, when you communicate through your heart, or when you are when you show them you are concerned about their future, then you rise as a role model in the perception of the students, and so uh, they can follow you, and you can lead them towards a better future. So we should, as a teacher, believe that and always remember that we are the persons in this world who are heard and seen mostly, and our impact is being received consciously and unconsciously by our students, and those who listen to ourselves really matter to the world. So we should encourage our students and motivate them to reach the highest level of their motivation, in which uh, they become aware about their strengths and weaknesses, and they are self-aware, and they maintain or achieve the growth level of self-actualization. So here is the famous uh, diagram of needs, uh, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we must strive for the highest uh, need, which is self-actualization here. But we must be aware that without fulfilling the lower needs, we will be unable to impart higher needs of motivation, or higher needs of achievement in the students. So basic needs must be met, which is the delivery of the content and the learning process. Then the actual self-actualization process must be started. So as you can see, we can start with the deficiency needs, which are essential for the students to cover the material and to understand the concepts. And then we can enhance the level and direct students to achieve more that is not the part of the course, or some advanced concept which has been left to do by the students, so that we give them the motivation and the right direction to grow themselves in such skill to achieve their to achieve to best of their capabilities. Hence, there are a variety of ways to motivate a learner. You can encourage them to build the self-esteem. You can give them the confidence that they can do they can do the assigned task in a more effective way, by encouraging them, by motivating them, by eliminating the problems associated with the learning of particular group or particular student. Reward is another good incentive. You can encourage the student in front of whole class by solving some problem on the whiteboard, or by solving some problem first, or by solving some problem in a more efficient way than the rest of the class. You can give them some higher grade or marks, and even verbal communication of reward is quite beneficial for the motivation of the students. You should build some goals, and you should plan those goals in a timely manner, so that the motivation is not motivation does not decrease over the time, and you should follow the schedule. And to encourage the students, to motivate them to solve the problem or to answer to your questions, so that the overall motivation level is increased, you should give them options to choose from the answers, or you should give them options to solve the questions or the types of the questions. You should engage students in a more analytical and a critical manner, so that the curiosity is always present. You should conduct classes in a more analytical manner, and probe the students with regular questioning, without just delivering the content to the students. So the next step is to ask repeated questions, to generate questions from the questions, so that the students are able to motivate themselves to find out the answer by themselves. So you should be supportive. You should play a sportive role of a facilitator to find out the problem solution. You should give them some challenging task, but not too challenging. It should be at some reasonable level of complexity. You should give them some authentic learning task which has been established in the subject or in the field, so that they can get resources or online available material which will help them to further investigate the problem. And in general, you should have some conducive and organized environment in your classroom or in your online class activity, so that no one strays from the main topic or main agenda or main goal of your lecture, and the end objectives are always in line with your teaching. So you have often encountered cases where you try to motivate the student and give them some encouraging remarks along with some difficult or slightly more challenging tasks than they have been taught or they have achieved prior to that particular assignment. So they you have also feel that they feel stressed, and when the students are stressed, eventually they will give back the stress to the teachers or the management as well. So you have to employ several strategies to manage the stress of the students, which will eventually help you to manage your stress as well. So by definition, stress is a state of anxiety produced when events and responsibilities exceed one's coping abilities. So that means you should expect the students to achieve or accomplish such tasks which are within their coping abilities. So this can be done by uh, decreasing the difficulty of the task or by increasing the learning of the student, which will be eventually done if you invest your uh, capabilities by developing on the learning of the students for that particular subject. So, similarly, like the previous activity, I will again request you to pause for a few minutes and take a pen and paper and uh, list down the different kinds of stressors as a teacher you have experienced over the years. So you can rank those stressors. There are some students in your memory which are highly stressful whenever you give them a task, and there are some mild stressors, and there are the some who do not bother about what type of task is given. So again, uh, find out or contemplate whenever these events have occurred, how did you handle those uh, those students or those events. So as I mentioned, there are variety of stressors which can uh, deteriorate the students' condition, the condition of their mind, and eventually that stress will be propagated to other places. So the common stresses are listed here. The first one is the parental pressure for high grades. Many students feel pressure to get higher grades. Therefore, they feel pressurized whenever you demand a slightly complex task from them, and they extrapolate on those pressure situations. Sometimes lack of educational resources at the institution is also a stress issue, which has been quite common in these days, where many people or many students lack the facility of proper internet. Many lack the proper machinery such as laptops or digital uh, smartphones. There is are some also some cases where there is no availability of reading material. So I have emphasized in one of the previous slides that we should employ a variety of methods to engage students, and one of the method is to give them the essential reading materials along with the slides. Also manage the assignments in a timely manner. I will request everyone to do not bombard the students at the end of the semester or the mid of the semester with the assignments. So if you follow proper schedule, the stress level for the students as well as yourself will be minimized. Sometimes the institution is not matching the learner's abilities, because in some subjects you may have set a higher level of complexity for the students or abilities to judge for the students, and in some cases the subjects are quite easy, or in some cases uh, the material is repeated in multiple courses, which is also one reason for the learner's stress. Most importantly, a negative attitude of the teachers play great role uh, for the level of stress in the students. So we must be well aware of our actions, our verbal and non-verbal communication, because the students are uh, the students are actually uh, seeing us all the time, and they are observing our behavior. And whenever they form a query and uh, we respond them with negative behavior, it will eventually create stress in the student, and which will not be beneficial for the learning process. Also try to build some rapport with the student, because most of the students feel left out from the teachers. Therefore build a strong and friendly, I would not say friendly, a strong and more professional attitude with the student. And sometimes students also feel that the teacher is not providing the adequate support, which also leads to the stress. Fear of exam is a common stress which cannot be mitigated, but it can be lessened by providing them with the essential material. Some people doubt their effectiveness, which can be minimized by encouragement. Some feel problem in the scheduling, which can be handled at the department level. Some feel that they are becoming too involved in the work, and they think about the work, that particular task, all the time, which leads to the stress. So whenever you are delivering a long class, you should take a moment to for a pause or some other activity to divert the attention, and then diverting them back to the main agenda. Some feel to manage some feel difficulties in managing interaction with the others. Some are stressed by the teacher's discouraging behavior. So teachers should be encouraging all the time, and uh, some people feel stressed because of their negative thinking or pessimistic approach. And as a teacher, we should encourage them, and we should help them to see a positive direction. So here are some common stress management techniques, and first of all is the time management. So I think if we properly deliver our lectures and other training materials such as tutorials, lab files, or lab material or other helping material in time with the schedule, the stress of the student and the teacher is minimized to certain extent. Secondly, if you assess them on the proper times, such as giving them enough time for the quizzes, assignments, and examination, uh, this will eventually lead to lower stress level. On the other hand, if you do not follow the schedule, it will greatly enhance the level of stress in the students as well as in the teacher. You should also have faith in the students, and you should encourage them to have faith in their abilities that they can do a particular task. So you should approach them in a positive manner when they query you about the difficulty of any task. You should include some humor in your classes and in your activities with the student, but this humor should be within the specified limits by your professional behavior. Give them goal often helps the student to direct attention and employ methods to solve problems. So without goal, assignments or tasks are quite difficult. So manage the statements or other verbal or non-verbal communication in a goal directed manner, and also provide social support if they encounter any stressful scenario. So providing support in stressful environment and motivating students to achieve better leads us to the next topic, which is the provision of guidance and counseling to the student. So students often request you for the guidance, and you should uh, guide them and counsel them in an appropriate way so that their queries are addressed in a proper manner, and your guidance and counseling helps them to advance in their life. So in guidance and counseling sessions, your role is to listen to the problems and understand the conceptual problems of the students and the uh, level of help they are requiring. Then, when you listen to all of the facts, you should identify the problems and help them in decision making and provide them support whenever they ask for further help. So guidance and counseling is quite essential for the teachers to provide it to the students, because eventually it will lead to many uh, impacts that are beneficial for the learning of the students. For example, it will lead to the achievement of the mental health. So whenever the students are mentally healthy and relaxed, they are more uh, happy to learn about the new concepts. It will give them a solution to their problems. It will improve their efficacy and their reliability. It will help them to make decisions in their life. It will support in modifying their behavior. It will support in managing their change behavior. So make sure whenever you are giving guidance, you are giving them by with your pure intentions and without the interest of yourself. So here are the some of the characteristics which you should consider having in your personality to become a better counselor. You must be professionally competent in any environment to give the suggestions or counseling to the students. You must be aware of the general issues which are presented by the students. You must have a big heart to accept the differences of the difference of opinion between the between yourself and the students. You Most importantly, you must be able to maintain confidentiality, and you should avoid gossip about the student's problem. Be a good listener, be empathetic, be willing to support, have some patience, and provide the role of facilitator. In some cases, rarely required when a student is facing from a serious trauma, a psychological testing may be recommended by the teacher. So it could be an important step before initiating the counseling step. So it will provide the mental health status and it will help in planning the intervention. So you should seek proper medical attention for such kids which are facing from some psychological trauma and they require psychological testing. So whenever you are guiding and counseling student, use effective communication skills, give verbal and non-verbal signals and gestures. Be very careful in selection of words. Sit in appropriate body postures, make eye contact, and nod while listening to the problem. So you should actively listening for the clarification. You should probe for further investigation and ask for rephrasing and ask for their internal feeling about the problem. Then you should summarize in front of the student and then ask further questions to carefully guide them in a proper manner. So that was some concept about the skills that a teacher must have in themselves to become effective at instructions and organization of the matters. So in the final few slides, I will overview the key concepts covered in the previous slides and list down the key pedagogical skills which we have discussed intrinsically. So here I will mention some skills explicitly which you should employ in everyday teaching. So one of the common skill for the teachers is to have the skill of reinforcement. So it is the talent to appreciate the learner as they need social approval for their behavior. It is the appreciation for correct answer that will make them more eager to respond with the correct answers. So it will help them to increase their participation. So if we think of over time of student life, we can recall that teachers uh, appreciation, reinforcement, or encouragement filled our hearts with joy, and on the other hand, negative criticism always disappointed us. So, if a sentence may change internal condition of the students, then when we were facing it, how it is possible that continuous teachings of the teacher could not change a student's mind and soul. So the difference is only that a builder can show in his building while a teacher cannot show his constructed personality in some physical form. So it is the internal change that occurs in the body that cannot be seen, but like some fragrance, it can be sensed. So you can observe that change in the thinking of students, their accomplishments and educated behavior at least proves it. So if you give them some positive reinforcement, you can observe some positive behavior modification. On the other hand, if you provide no reinforcement, you may often feel the problem of passive classroom where you are alienated from the students, or in the extreme cases when you provide the negative reinforcement, you feel disconnected with your students, or often feel some difficult situations where you both parties are moving in opposite directions. So another important skill is the skill of illustrating with examples. So always have examples ready with you, and they should be specifically related to your concepts. So it should be concrete, everyday, or first-hand experiences. It always gives the advantage of economy time and increase the pace of explanation. You should also have a skill of explanation. That means you should be confident about the concept and your knowledge. It is important to research about your concepts before delivering it to the students. You should use simpler, clear, and logical structure of your content delivery. You should enhance with the use of visual aids, and personal experience may bring an explanation alive. Another important skill is the skill of evaluation. So always practice teaching with some form of evaluation. Teaching is not complete without the evaluation. So you should recognize and assess students regularly in a given time frame. So the evaluation should be objective, specific, such as based on some learning outcomes or course objectives. You should base the evaluation on the diagnosis of the problems encountered in the topics or subject. You should provide remedial measures. You should encourage the self-evaluation of the students so that they are able to check their own performance and get motivation to do better. Evaluation should stress the application level as well. So there are other few skills which help you to uh, engage students and deliver your content in more effective way, and some of these are classroom discipline. So if you are able to manage your classroom in a more disciplined manner, you have more time and more conducive environment to deliver your content. You should maintain your dignity and you should not fall below a certain standard. You should be consistent and firm in your decision, which will eventually make the student feel that they have to follow the schedule and the content to achieve their task. Be self-critical, and if there is an error in your judgment or in your assessment, make yourself open to correct it. You should be aware to recognize the attention and the lack of attention of the students, and you should display confidence while coping with the multiple issues in the class. So that is the end of this tutorial, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Thank you very much.